Hello! So we are live. Hey guys, it's Kaylin, the owner of Fantasy Monthly, and we are live today to talk about chapters 11 through 20 of Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I love this book. I'm going to keep saying it every time I come live because it was fantastic. It is by far my most favorite read of the year, which is great to say because I obviously read a lot of books. So this book is so good, and let's jump right into it. So, as you guys know, we're discussing chapters 11 through 13 today. 11 through 20. I don't know why I said 13. And the first thing we will talk about is the book club card. But first, let's do a little rundown on what happens between chapter 11 and 20. So, 11 starts out as Nathaniel taking her to Ashcroft Manor to talk to Ashcroft about what she experienced at the Great Library. And he drops her off without knowing what's going to happen, and it progresses to Ashcroft attempting to get her declared psychotic or clinically insane in order for her to be shipped off to Ledgate Hospital in order to be kept there and just kept quiet so she doesn't tell anyone what she saw or what happened. And it turns out that she is resistant to demonic energy or demonic magic because she hears all of that. She hears his plan, she hears how awful he is, and that is pretty much what we learn about in these chapters. His plans, his involvement, and also you get to learn a little bit more about the demons and what they mean to the sorcerers and how they're more than just a conduit of magic, at least for Nathaniel it is. So that's kind of what you're learning. And then towards the end, we figure out that she is looking for the codex, of course, because she believes that's the only way to stop Ashcroft from doing these horrible acts. And she finds out that the codex is in the restricted section of the Royal Library, and she is going to enlist Silas's help in finding it and stealing it. So that's kind of how we end on chapter 20 to chapter 21. So now we could talk a little bit about the Fantasy Monthly Book Club question cards. And the first question, of course, is how well does the author establish her fantasy world within the book? For these chapters, I thought that she did a really nice job of elaborating with the plot and elaborating with her deep-seated story here of the sorcerers who are connected to demons for their powers, and I thought that was a very interesting point that got expanded in this section of the book. She really talked about the demons and how Silas and Nathaniel have this relationship that's more than just conduit and person using it. So I think that's very interesting and then you also get on the other side of it where Ashcroft and his demon, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce her name, it starts with an L though, how Ashcroft and his demon have a very business-like relationship, which apparently is not unusual, and Silas and Nathaniel are more like family. And I don't know about you guys, but these chapters in particular is really when I started to fall in love with Silas. I know he's a side character, but he is fantastic, and he is a great addition to the book, and I just really loved his character and his story in this book, especially when you start to get to know him in these core chapters 11 through 20. So yes, I think she did a very nice job of continuing to establish her fantasy world within the book through these chapters. And then question number 2 is, what was your favorite quote or passage? So my favorite quote or passage, I had marked it, is in chapter 17, and it's on page 194. My favorite part about fantasy books or YA books in general is the romance and the mystic, but the best part about the romance is when the two main characters are starting to have little banters and funny jokes and inside stories and jokes, and I love that part about a book. So my favorite passage for these chapters was on page 194, and she says, Elizabeth spotted some fragile glass instruments arranged on the table nearby. She climbed back down the ladder and drifted toward them. "What are these?" she inquired. "They look breakable." "Don't touch those," Nathaniel said hastily. "No, don't touch that either," he added, as she changed course and headed for the jewel globe instead. When she ignored him, he threw his hands up in surrender. "Fine, have it your way, you absolute terror. You could borrow as many grimoires as you want, as long as you keep your hands off everything else." "That's the rule." She beamed. He stared at her for a moment, then snapped his gaze back to his desk. "What is it?" "You need some new clothes," he said, pretending to read one of the papers. She knew he was pretending, because the paper was upside down. "I'm going to run out of pajamas at this rate. I'll set Silas to the task. He loves that sort of thing. Prepare to be fashionable, because he'll accept nothing less." I laughed so hard when I read this part the first time, so I just really enjoy that kind of like little witty banter between the main characters. It really makes the romance and the friendship of the characters seem very real to me, which is kind of hard in some YA books, in my opinion. It's hard to get that connection of, this seems realistic. So it really started to make it seem realistic for me. So that was a big quote for me. And of course, there's probably much better, more poetic quotes, but I love that when you see the banter between the two main characters. So number 3 is 2 parts, so we'll answer part 1 and then go into part 2. So part 1 is, how believable did you find the narrator to be? In chapters 11 through 20, I found the narrator to have evolved and experienced a bit of growth. In the first part of the book for me, she was very unsure. She was very just seemed to be resentful of her situation and seemed to strive for perfection and strive for other people's approval. So I would say that she experienced growth between chapters 11 through 20, Elizabeth did, and that growth allowed her to become stronger and allowed her to make her own decisions and to decide to fight back and to make sure that no one else gets hurt by Ashcroft. So that seemed to be a bit of a emerging for her, and that made it really believable. The storyline and her character growth was really shown throughout these chapters. So I do find the narrator very believable because she is very relatable in that she has growth throughout different aspects of her life. So I love that part about it. And then part 2, did you feel like you got the true story? So far, yes, I think we're getting the true story, especially now because this is the middle of the book. You're getting a lot of those juicy details of who the real villain is and what her role is in stopping him. So I think we are getting a lot of the true story now. We're getting all the details, all the nitty-gritties, and knowing exactly where the book is going. Maybe not exactly, but a lot about it. And I think that the author has a really good progression of events and progression of character growth going, and I'm excited to see it continue throughout the last part of our read-along. Question 4, do you think the story was plot-based or character-driven? So at the beginning of the book, I thought that it was very character-driven because she was doing a lot of character growth, and it was plot-based as well because she was growing up and establishing her fantasy world within the first few chapters, but now I think it's extremely plot-based through chapters 11 through 20 because she is just laying the groundwork for the main course of the story, which will be the end, her fighting Ashcroft and making sure that he cannot commit his evil acts anymore. So you're getting a lot of that groundwork, a lot of the meat of the story in these chapters. So I think it's very plot-based at this point in time. And earlier in the book, of course, for me, it was character-driven. And again, question 5 has 2 parts. So we'll go with the first one, which is what made the setting unique or important. So the setting of chapters 11 through 20 was very unique because she is in a sorcerer's house, Nathaniel's house, and she's working in the royal library with all the grimoires, and I just think it's a very unique setting because, yes, there's other magical worlds that have been spun by different authors. Of course, everyone thinks, when they think magic, they think Harry Potter, and there are magical books in Harry Potter, but none of them are magical to the extent of having their own consciousness. They are controlled and moved around and fluttered by magic, by people doing magic, but in this book, Grimoires, these books have a magic all their own, and they have consciousness, and they all have different sets of wings, or voices, or powers, so I think this book has a part of it that is set apart from other magical stories that I have heard or read. So this one, for me, is extremely unique, and important because it's just, the setting is perfect for it. The characters are perfect. The idea of these magical books is perfect, that hold a huge esteem in both human and sorcerers' lives. So I think it is very unique in comparison to even a series called Harry Potter. And the second part, could the story have taken place anywhere? I think my first one kind of piggybacks with this, but I would say it could not have. There are similar stories, but none of them have the same exact plot. So I would say that this story does have a mind and a place all its own, and I don't think it could be taken place anywhere else. So those are all of the Fantasy Monthly Book Club discussion questions for this chapter. I'm loving this book. It is, as I said earlier, my favorite book of the year. It is fantastic. I love it so much. And I really want to see your guys' opinions of the growth of these questions in the comments below. I especially want everybody to put in the comment below your favorite quote from chapter 11 through 20. What is your favorite quote? Is it something like mine, where you just decided that you love the witty banter of the two main characters? Or is it something more poetic, aesthetic? So just tell me in the comments below what your favorite quote was. You could even do so far in the book, chapters 1 through 20, what has been your favorite quote so far, and just let me know in the comments your opinions on these other questions, how the character development is going, how the fantasy world is being established, plot-based, character-driven. Let me know. I really want to know your opinions, and let's just have a discussion. Even if you have another question for me that isn't on this card, I'd really like to have a discussion with you guys. I love this book. It actually brought me out of a reading rut that I've been in for a while. So I love this book so much, and I love talking about it. So just leave some comments below of other questions, your answers to this, and we'll have a nice chat. Thanks for tuning in.